Hello everybody and welcome back at Adobe Live. We are here with a brand new illustration challenge, and today we're going to be talking about the foundation of Illustrator. In particular, foundation of Illustrator when we talk about print. So today we're going to be exploring how to create a file for print. What are the things that you have to have on your checklist? And also we're going to talking about exporting. We're going to talking about finishing. I have a lot of things to show. I don't know if many of you have been joining the challenge before. I'm your host, Kladi. I'm an Italian designer based in Manchester, UK. And one of my first jobs was actually to work in a printer shop. So I have a ton of actually physical things to show you, including my book. So why don't we just get started? And remember, as usual here, you can just chill, relax, enjoy the stream, embrace this wonderful community, and just watch the stream. And then after, in your own time, you can join the challenge, or you can just jump right in by opening Adobe Illustrator. No matter if you are a beginner or if you're a professional, intermediate, this stream is open for everybody. And today we have a brand new wave of accessing your files. If you actually click on the starter file link, the artboard will open up right away inside your Illustrator. So go ahead and click on the link. Of course, you have to open Illustrator first. So make sure that you open your app and then click on the link to make sure that the files open up. And let me know in chat if that works fine with you. And talking about, let's see if I can actually show you how it works within my. This stream is open for everybody, and today with too many Kladi's voice. How it works in my laptop. I was actually gonna go ahead and show you how these link work, but let me go ahead and jump in my screen so you can also share that with me. Right, so the link should open up. It looks like at the moment it's still giving me the file, the normal file that we have. Let me know in the chat how it works for you, if you're actually having to download the file like I'm doing right now, or if you should be what we call a deep link. So it's a link that automatically opens in Illustrator. Anyway, let's go ahead and open up our file so we can start together. Either way, it doesn't matter whatever way we get to the file, but the most important thing is to actually get to the actual challenge number 4 today. So the first thing that I'm going to show you here are two very important definitions and two very important areas of a printing file. I'm going to leave that there. Those are margins and bleed. Bleed refers to an area that it extends outside your printing page, while the margin is that safe area inside. Wade is saying not a deep link for me. It looks like they are not working yet. That's totally fine as long as you can get to the file. Thank you so much, Wade, for letting us know. But now that we are here with the file, then we can start also to understand a little bit more about how to set up a file for print. As I said, margins are the safe area that is inside the document. Bleed is the area that is outside. We're also going to talk about grids. So if you have access to the file, it's absolutely fine. We can have a play here, or we can also start from scratch. In fact, if you open up Illustrator, the best way when you start a new document is to create a new file. You can click on the new file little button there, or you can press the Command N on a Mac. That will be Control N on a Windows in order to open up the new document file. And from there, it's always very important to set your intent. As you can see, every time that you click on your intent, these details here, which are the document settings, will change. And in fact, if we do click on print, we will be able to change automatically our file into millimeters or inches, depending where you're at and where you're working on. Now, the first thing that you want to do is, of course, to name your file. I'm going to call it a thank you card, or just, you can do whatever you want. You can do a business card, you can do a menu, you can do a flyer, whatever you want. I'm just going to write thank you card. And then let me know in the chat if any of you has ever worked with special finishing. So I'm talking about foil or UV or embossing, debossing. Let me know. Anyway, once you set your name of your file and you set the size, we're going to go ahead and maybe use an A4. You can also set the orientation. So the orientation let you know if you want to have a file that is going to be portrait, which is basically the vertical mode, or if you wanted landscape, which is the horizontal mode. Just think that I always try to think like portrait is like a photo of your face, and then a landscape is almost like a countryside or whatever landscape you can imagine. It is usually horizontal. So that's what they're called. I'm going to go ahead and select my thank you card to be on landscape mode. And you can choose more than one artboard if you wish perhaps to design more than one file at the same time. So we can go ahead and select 2, maybe 3. It doesn't really matter. You can always add artboard when you have created the file. Now, we were talking about bleed and margins. You can go ahead and set the bleed right away from your document setting. Now, the standard size for bleed is usually 3 millimeters. You can always double check with your printer what is the preferred size for them to use when printing. And is usually 0.125 inches. That corresponds to 3 millimeters. So that's absolutely up to you. Again, if you want to, you can use even more. The whole idea, and I'm going to start showing you something here. The whole idea of the bleed, if we get something like, for example, this notebook. This notebook has a printed cover and then white pages inside. But now the paper, you can see if I'm going to turn the paper inside, the paper is actually white or has a different pattern inside. So what happened when we lay out our design? Once we lay out our design, imagine that this is our artboard and we set this file just over here with our design. Our printer, whenever you see any file that has been printed, is trimmed with a machine that is called guillotine. Now, this guillotine doesn't print one single item at a time. As I said, I used to work in a printer, and the stack of paper that get printed at the same time is usually this thick. It's probably as big as my head. So whenever you have so much paper that is kept together by this hair suction that keeps the paper, moves the paper inside the trimming machine, it could be that any of the sheets of paper that are in between, they might move inside this big stack. So what happens if they move? We give this 3 millimeter of space, which is a 3 millimeter of space that we allow our printer in order to make sure that whenever the paper gets printed, I'm just going to go full screen real quick so probably you can see this a little bit better. Whenever we have our file printed, if we do extend the artwork outside the margin, so outside the area when it's going to be printed, we will avoid to have any white area. And you probably see it to any design and any designer that is not printed without with a bleed. It happens that we have some errors like that. So some paper may look like they have a white margin on the side and it looks all wonky and it doesn't look perfectly like the art and the design, and the background extends to the very edge. Well, that means that the designer didn't have a bleed and the printer machine definitely went a little bit off, and therefore we end up with having this ugly white line that make the mistakes of the machine very obvious. So by selecting the bleed, what we will do is allow the printer to have the jiggle room, so even if the paper just moves outside of the trimming line, we'll still allow more space for the design to be still there, and nobody's gonna notice, because at the end of the day, people notice only because of the contrast between your background and the whiteness or whatever color of the paper. But if you extend your design so you make it bigger than the actual size, no matter where it's trimmed, you will not notice the mistake. So that is very, very important. Hopefully everybody understands what this is all about. It's very simple. Just make sure to extend it a little bit extra, and we're gonna see also what that means inside the document. So I'm happy with my bleed here. If you wanna, I tend to create a bleed at the same side all around my document, so make sure that you have your link icon selected whenever you click on the bleed. Now CMYK stands for cyan, magenta, yellow, and K for black, which are the color component of the printing machine. Printer have a different way of lining up up the colors. It's not necessarily the cyan, magenta, yellow, and K on a line. On the big lithographic machines, that's how they're called, where the paper goes through and gets printed all first magenta, then yellow, then cyan, and then black. Again, depending on the effect, you can also go and choose whatever color you want to layer. I will strongly recommend that if you are into print, go and visit a printer. It's a wonderful experience. Look for lithographic machine. Those are the standard for medium to large productions. And then another very important thing that your printer is going to ask you is the raster effect. This is a pixel per inch, or in particular for print, we refer to DPI, dot per inch. This is the distribution of the ink inside the paper per each inch. And it just, you don't have to understand the full technology of it, but what you want to remember and take note of is to make sure that whenever you send a file for print, 300 DPI is the standard resolution that your printer is gonna expect from your file. And whenever we're gonna ready to select your size, again, up to you, whatever you want to create the size of your document, you can go ahead and click on create. Now, once you open your document, you see very clearly that we have 3 different artboards. And what we see here is this line that stands outside. So this red line over here, I'm going to go ahead and zoom, is actually the bleed line. It determines the area outside the document to which we're going to stretch our background to. Therefore, whenever I create a document for print, I'm going to make sure that, let's go ahead and click at rectangle. Actually, I'm going to use a pattern that we created into our pattern challenge. And if you're interested about creating pattern, go ahead and check out our illustration challenge where we created a pattern. And I'm going to go ahead and tilt it. And by the way, because I said before, you can always change the artboard. If you change your mind, maybe you want to do a portrait instead of a landscape, you can always select your artboard, head to the properties panel and simply click on edit artboards. And from there, you will have access to pretty much the same options that we had before. So here I'm going to click on the portrait icon real quick, and you will see that your artboard will automatically change into portrait. It looks like it's overlapping one of the 3 artboard present, so I'm just going to move it away. Now, as I said before, instead of placing your background over here, so the black line delimits the trim line, so that's exactly where the document is going to be cut. We're going to go ahead and make it bigger so it actually extends to our bleed. So we're going to make sure that if the printer comes and trims the file wrong, so instead of landing on this black line, lands anywhere outside, we gave the margin of error so it can automatically hide the mistake the printer has made. Fantastic. So once we have extended our background, we can go ahead and perhaps lock this layer. And once we lock this layer, we won't be able to make any changes. So it's nice and it stays there. You can always double click on the layer and call it background, and you can move forward. Now I'm going to go ahead and move forward on another file because I want to make sure that you actually see what I'm doing and the pattern is a little bit more overpowering. I'm going to go ahead and click on create new layer to add a new layer. If you never worked with layers before, layers are like containers in which you can put any sort of image, and also we're going to see guides. So I'm going to call these layers guides. These guides are going to be guides for our margin and for our layout column. In Illustrator, we do not have an option to automatically create row columns and margins. So how do we do that? Well, very simple. The first thing is that to select the letter M or press the letter M in order to activate your rectangle tool. You can also find the rectangle tool inside your toolbar. Here it is, looks like a rectangle, pretty straightforward. You can see always we have there the shortcut showing up. And then I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I intersect one of the corner of the artboard. So right now I am not targeting my bleed, I am targeting the black, so the outside line, which is the trim line. And then I'm going to go ahead and click and drag until I intersect the other opposite side. I'm going to change the color of this rectangle just so we have an idea of where it's at. It doesn't really matter the color because we're going to get rid of it in just a second. So this is exactly the same size of our artboard. And what we have to do now is to click on it and then head into Object, select Path, and from there offset path. And exactly as it says on the tin, the offset path is going to change the size of the path by offsetting its outline, its path. So whenever you create an offset of a positive number, we're going to be moving outside the actual size of our path. Well, if you give the offset a negative value, it's going to move inside the path. Let me go ahead and zoom in so probably you can see it a little bit better. So can you see this line that is inside? This is the offset. I'm going to go back into a positive number. The shapes become bigger. And if we go inside, this is actually the size of your margin. So anywhere from wherever the line is till the trim, this is called safe area. And we keep this safe area to make sure that we do not put any text outside. Again, we don't want to make sure, like we did for the background. With the background and the bleed, we extend it outwards to make sure that whenever the printer cuts it, it doesn't create the white space. But whenever we have it inward, we make sure that we don't have any text that goes outside the actual margin. And I'm just going to again show you my book here real quick. In this case, we are just simply selecting the margin out here. We always make sure that we create a little margin there. So also not only we create a safe space for the printer to cut and make sure that none of the important content goes outside the pages, but also this will be a great tool for you to keep consistency while designing. So let's jump back into here. I'm going to select a 20 millimeter margin. Anything above 7, usually it's fine. And I'm just going to show you what 7 looks like. So anything that is above 7 is already safe. Maybe let's make it 12, just so. I like to give a little bit of extra margin because it also helps to frame your content. You almost work like a picture frame. I'm going to go ahead and click on OK, and you will see now that we have two different areas. Now you have two options. I'm going to hold Option and drag it out just to create a copy. And as you can see, we have two shapes. I'm going to change its color so we have a better idea of the two different colors there. I'm going to just make it blue so it's nice, stands out in contrast. This is the safe area inside, and this is the margin outside. What I'm going to do here is to go ahead and select my shape builder tool. And by clicking on the shape builder tool, we're going to be able to select just the margin area and click on it to just isolate the frame. And I'm going to go ahead and hold the Option key in order to access the subtract mode and delete the internal side of the rectangle. So we're left here with this little frame, which we can use inside our template there, inside of our, maybe I'm going to give it like a little nice light color so it doesn't clashes too much. So we could use it perhaps to indicate that it's a safe area. You can put on your document, so you want to make sure that nothing crosses there. If you want something a little bit more subtle, all you have to do is to perhaps, let's get rid of the main container. This is the safe area. So the border, the actual outline of these rectangle here delimits the safe area inside the document. You can very easily change that into actual guides by using the shortcut Command 5. That will be Control 5 into a PC. And you see that right away we have created some margin by using Shape, Offset, and then Command 5 or Control 5 to transform it into grid. And you can always add into View, and then here from Guides, you can also choose to lock your guides. So now it's locked, we can keep designing, is there for us to have a reference. If you want, as I said, something a little bit more visible, of maybe you're creating a template for your future self, you can always use this little frame that you created before, and you can actually just call it maybe safe area. And you can always go ahead and lock it like we did before. So you can always hide it and they disappear, and make sure to turn it off though. So whenever you use the guides, that's perhaps a good tip to mention. Whenever you use the guides, they won't print. So this area over here, this blue line will not print. This pink area will print. So remember, maybe just, call the layer to hide, or whatever reference that you want to maintain to make sure that you hide that particular area there. At the moment, I'm just going to go ahead and remove it because I don't usually use it. I'm happy just with the guides and with just a few minutes, but I want to show you also how to use, how to create columns and rows, because again, this is not something like InDesign that you can easily create automatically inside Illustrator, but it's also very, very simple to do once you know this special trick that I'm about to show you. So in order to create your columns and row, of course, you need to know how many columns and row. Let's just say that for this example, we want to create maybe two rows and 3 columns. What do you need to decide if you want to create the columns from the page or from the margin? I usually like to create it from the margin because, as I said, I do not have any content inside, outside the margin. So I'm just going to go ahead and resize this rectangle to the size of my margin. Here it is. Of course, I'm moving a little bit faster here because time goes way too fast during these challenges. Make sure to zoom in every time to make sure that you're actually selecting the right size. Then with your shape selected, head to object, and here you can add to path, and you can split into grid with this quick option over here. So go ahead and select split into grid, and the split into grid panel will pop up. You can assign whatever row you want. In this case, we say 2 rows and 3 columns. Make sure to click on preview to see that happening live. You can always, change the number of rows if you're not happy with whatever is going on in there. Maybe you want to do at 3x4. And also you can add gutter. The gutter is the space in between the line, which again is so useful for you to make your design consistent. I'm going to make the gutter maybe 5 and 5 as well for the space in between the column. Perfect. So all we're left to do here are 2 different options. You can either choose to click on add guides, and the document will add guides, although it extended throughout the artboard. So you will see the guides are there, but they extend throughout the artboard. I don't want that. I just want that inside my document. So I'm going to go ahead and tick off add guides, and I'm going to click on OK. But then I'm going to use the shortcut that we used before, Command C. That will be Control C. And here we go. Our guides and our row are there. And because we have locked them before, now all we're left to do is to go ahead and place any items we want. Let me go ahead real quick in my library and perhaps choose any of these graphics over here. So let's say that we want to add this plant. I'm just going to go ahead and paste it inside my design for my thank you card. I will be able to use my guide to resize and use my document just like so. So I know that I'm gonna just use this particular area of the image for my postcard for the image, and I can leverage the power of the guide to give a structure to my document. Now, before we say goodbye, there is something else that is very important, and as I say, I wanted to show you real quick. So whenever you work with a printer, as I say, besides visit them, I always tend to get different colors that are working on different papers. So here I have a very flimsy uncoated paper, and then I have the same color on a coated paper, and then you can also have the same color references with maybe a little UV spot on. As you can see, this is a gloss paper, is much more shinier, so I can see all the different colors, and majority of printers have these guides, so don't be shy. Ask. It is your right to know, and also that will make your clients very, very happy. And also here you will have the chance to discover special finishing, like having some nice foils. And again, don't be shy. That is the beauty of working with printers. Sorry, I'm disappearing off screen because I have a lot of things to show you besides breaking my studio. Ask for the opportunity of choosing all your stock. This is just an example, and I'm just showing you this to get you excited about asking more of these fancy foils finishing that you can ask your printer. Look, you have access to any color you want, and also special effect and glitter, maybe if you want to create like a special card or maybe for Christmas. But also what you can play with is something like white ink that you can place on different color paper. So here it is. Those are all sample of colored paper. So do not limit yourself. Maybe let's not choose green with our green screen. You can choose and play with any paper you want, and then you can apply different finishing. So it's not only white paper. Paper comes in all sort of different colors and textures that you want to make sure that you take in consideration before you start your printing project. As I say, I was going to show you my book. My book features some white ink over there, which I'm going to show you. I know I have 1 minute how to add inside your book. So as you can see, I've used blue paper, brown paper, and a white recycled paper. Now, real quick, very simple. If you want to go ahead, and let me just jump back into my screen, and I have 1 minute. In order, let's see, to make and tell the printer that I want this specific vase into gold. First of all, I will tell in the email that this will be gold, but most importantly, what I want to show you here is that I'm going to go ahead and copy this particular part of the illustration, head to my layer, create a new layer, and I'm gonna call it foil or gold foil, whatever you want, gold foil, and I'm gonna paste this again inside this document by pressing Command F to paste it in place. And then I'm also gonna go ahead and make sure by clicking Window and then Color that I set this particular item to 100% black. So I'm gonna set my magenta, cyan, and yellow to 0, and I'm gonna make sure that everything is set to black. And in my particular preference, I also tend to save that as a separate file. So whenever you will export your file, I will turn off all the other layers and I will just be left with this item that I will send to the printer just like that as a single file sent in print, and the printer will know that this is the one that needs to be printed in foil because it gets printed separately. To save, just simply click on File, Save As, and then select Adobe PDF and click on Save. From here, make sure that you select High Quality Print and click on Save PDF. And that's pretty much it. I hope that I gave you all the important information for printing. Unfortunately, it's already time to say goodbye, but don't forget that we're gonna be back with more Illustrator challenges here on Adobe Live. Stay tuned, go and grab a glass of water because there is always more fun and amazing, talented speakers and and creatives at Adobe Live. I hope to see you soon. Sorry, it's time to say goodbye and I need to go and get a glass of water myself. Bye, everybody.